there's been a lot of talks recently about ways of being able to protect sensitive data across SaaS apps and AI apps using Microsoft Purview and Microsoft Entra. Essentially, that's the network data security layer feature, which combines all these beautiful features, security features for Microsoft. So Microsoft Purview, a combination of that whole information protection, DLP, insider risk, that gives us sort of that user behavior detection. Microsoft Entra, which is a combination of content policies, the security profile, and then that conditional access. So I've seen a lot of blogs being shared from Microsoft, people resharing the blog, people resharing the architecture infographic from that blog and learn from Microsoft. But I've still yet to see probably more of a human language being used and articulated, like how this works in real life, and really what this means for data security practitioners. Usually, there's a ton of new features that comes from Microsoft. It gets a little bit sort of cloudy in terms of how to use and how to deploy it. So without further ado, in today's session, I'm going to basically go through the whole motion of setting up this DLP and these other new features that sort of comes into play. Essentially, what we're trying to achieve is to be able to set all these features up to detect sensitive data in unmanaged SaaS apps, AI apps, and browser sessions. Whether it's prompts, detecting sensitive information being shared in these prompts. We're going to set this feature up, features up. So we'll jump straight in. I'm going to skip a couple of things here to kind of get straight into the weedy stuff of this. So usually, and what you can actually do at there's actually two ways to set up the DLP policy. Now, setting up the actual technical piece of this is actually reverse to what happens in real life. So, and I'll explain that at the end of this recording. So straight into the solution. Like I said, you can set this up through DSPM. But for this exercise, we're going to go straight into DLP, and I'll explain to you a couple of different things or new things that's being created or new features in DLP, how to create policies. So for those that are not familiar or don't play in this space as much as I do, if you look at this, if you look at Purview from time to time, every few months, you'll be surprised that there's always going to be something new coming from Microsoft. Now, when you create a DLP policy, if you probably about 6 months ago, you'll probably see a couple of different things. Now, when you create a new policy, you get these two different options. The traditional sort of enterprise application devices, that's your traditional Microsoft 365 location, your OneDrive, SharePoint devices, and now Copilot, right? The inline web traffic, that's your, being able to detect data or inspect data while it's moving through sort of the browser and network connection. So that's the space that we're going to create the policy in. We'll just go through the motion. Sorry, I'm also looking at my phone from time to time. This is a uncut recording video, so bear with me. So in this case, we'll just go straight into the demo. Let's go demo tech. I'll upload to manage apps. Usually, I wouldn't suggest creating a name on DLP this long. But for this exercise, just to get a bit more clarity what we're trying to do. So when you go into this, obviously you'll see, probably not familiar with this space if you haven't ventured into this inline web traffic. Unmanaged cloud apps, that whole particular column is really a collapsed version of everything that is under the sun of unmanaged cloud apps. The tab adaptive apps, which is where we want to go to, it's basically categorizes different sort of category. So the one that we're going to choose in, which is the very first one, which is the unmanaged AI apps. We'll add this. Go next. We'll just follow the process of this. For some of you, probably familiar with when we get to the policy setting. Now, in this case, if you haven't done this before, you'll have to set up your PAYG, right? So in most cases, whether it's if it's non-Copilot experience, there's bound to be a PAYG that's included. So for this case, I've set this up prior. For this exercise, we're just going to choose the network and non-Microsoft secure browsers. For this particular demo, we'll just go next. We'll go create a rule, and then for some of you will be familiar with this, we'll just go upload section. And then you'll see the condition, play it simple. We'll just go with info types, and because I'm Australian, I'm just going to choose pretty much all the Australian sensitive info types. As you can see, you can use your standard sensitivity labels. You may have some custom trainable classifiers as well, but in this case, we'll just choose this because the easiest one. For the actions, so once you've created the conditions, for us is what it contains. For the action, you're going to get one particular action, which is restricting it from the browser session and activity and network activities. So in this case, we'll just choose that. And then as you can see here, you get a couple of activities that we can do, whether to block them or not. In this case, we'll just leave it as audit. We'll choose the text that's being shared with cloud apps and AI apps, and also file upload. So again, we'll just go through the motions. We won't set this up because it's not a DLP demo, but in most cases, some of you are familiar with this space already. We'll go save. We'll go next, and then we'll leave it in simulation mode for now. And then we'll go submit. And the next step for us is we're going to go to identity or Entra ID. We're going to go to global secure access. We need to create a content policy and then a secure profile. So both of these policies will give us, enable us to create the conditional access to kind of finish off the whole setup of this. So if we go done, we want to jump into then Entra ID. I think this might be the one I've got open. Yeah. We want to go to global secure score, global secure access. So in this case, we want to create a content policy. So for this particular feature is, basically what we want to be able to create this. So it will basically identify the web traffic that basically wants to intercept and then basically pass that on to Microsoft Purview. Right, so once we create the policy, we'll just keep it simple. Go next. We'll just create a simple rule. Again, we'll just demo. We'll upload. And then as you can see here, if you're familiar with creating content policies, the difference is with this settings is that if you go to actions, we want to be able to scan with Purview, right? And this is where it sends the telemetry to Microsoft Purview, and then where DLP is actioned. You want to create the activities, file content. You just want to choose everything. Text content types. Again, we'll just choose everything on this. Session, we'll just go user. As you can see, you can also use agent for any different scenarios you may have. Destination, we'll just choose web category. For us in this demo, we'll just choose artificial intelligence, and then we'll add that. And once we add that, we'll go next, create this content policy, and then the next one is we'll need to create a security profile. What the security profile does is basically it enables us to then choose this from conditional access, to then sort of wrap everything up to everything that we've done, right? So once we've done that, it seems like it's created. So we'll go to security profiles. And then we should be able to pick up the content policy that we've just created. So once we've created this profile, something stuck there, we'll go to linker policy, and then we want to choose the content policy here because we've just created one. Should be able to drop down this and then find the one that we've just created, and then add that pretty quickly. We'll go next, and then we'll create a profile. Again, if you've done this as many times as I have, it's pretty quick. So the next one is basically we'll create a conditional access. If I can find that. So this one, conditional access. For most of you, the play around the security space or interest space, this is fairly simple, and just go through the motion. You'll see a couple of new things in here, obviously for this particular one. So if we just create this as part of the demo, CA, we'll choose users. We'll go all users and break things. Go target resources where you'll find the all internet resources that we want to choose. That's the option we want to go with. We'll go sessions. Again, won't go through the whole features of this, but essentially what we want to do is choose the profile that we've just created. You go global screw access security profile, we should be able to find the one we created. Select that, and then be able to create that conditional access. And voila. All right, so let's take a while. If we do a refresh, we should be able to see that. There you go. Like I said earlier in the recording, the whole setup of this is pretty much a reverse of what happens in real life, right? So in terms of the workflow, you have essentially, or generally speaking, is that you'll have a user that attempts to upload something sensitive to manage AI application. Second to that is you've got Microsoft Entra Internet Access that basically routes the user's web traffic to then the global secure access, which we've just created. Now, going back to that is that's when conditional access kicks in, right? So the conditional access policy that's linked to the security profile. The security profile then picks up the content policy that we've just created, and then basically that invokes the DLP policy we've also just created at the very beginning. Now, whatever conditions and whatever actions that we've created within the DLP, that's where it blocks, Purview evaluates everything before that we've created, and then actions, whether it's restricting or block that particular behavior. Okay.